Well, thank you for joining me this morning, which is 10:30 p.m. in Shanghai. As you look over my left shoulder, you'll see Shanghai by light anyway. Shanghai is a city of 24 million people. And I say that just to put China in perspective. Every city that we go to, you might think it's a small village, but it'll be a small village of 3 million people. And so everything is just magnified here in terms of the number of people, the incredible growth that you're seeing here in China. And there's a lot of energy here leading up to President Trump's visit as well. I want to give you a little bit of an overview as to what we've been doing here, make a couple of observations, then turn it over for questions, and I'll also ask Director Mike Preston to make some comments as well. We started in Beijing. We had a very good meeting with the China National Textile and Apparel Association, which is their national association that supports the textile and apparel industry, which I see as an opportunity sector for us in Arkansas. We've already recruited two garment and textile companies from China to reshore to Arkansas. They've chose Arkansas, and so this association helps us to see what other opportunities are here. I had a very good meeting with Ambassador Terry Branstad, who I served as governor with while he was governor of Iowa. He's the new ambassador here. It's been on the ground for a number of months, but we had a good visit with him, and I was able to raise issues with his economic and ag counselors about the importance of opening the markets here in China to Arkansas poultry and rice. And there's been an agreement signed where China is available for Arkansas rice, but they still have to go through some inspection protocols first. I urge that to be expedited so that we can get this market open to our Arkansas farmers that produce so well and need world markets such as this. Then we went to Jenin, where we met with Sun Paper, Chairman Lee, and his team there, as well as meeting with Rui, which is the garment company located in Forest City. Both meetings went very well, and again, as I indicated before I left Arkansas, that one of the purposes is to strengthen the relationships with the companies that have already committed to our state, and those meetings went very well. Sun Paper is one of the largest investments, of course, with a $1 billion investment in a paper mill in Arkadelphia area. They are looking at ways that they can make sure that they can utilize our incredible timber resources, and they have an even greater need for it today than they did when they signed the MOU. That project is moving along. We're very pleased with that. In terms of Rui in Forest City, they are moving ahead. They expect to be in production by June, which is very good news for Arkansas, particularly the workers that will be employed there in Forest City. In each stop, we meet with government officials as well, which is an important part of industrial recruitment here in China. We went on to sign the MOU today with RiceEver in Hefu province, and they are very excited about coming to Jonesboro. This will be the first facility that they will have outside of China. And of course, they looked at multiple states. I think it was about 70 different locations and chose Jonesboro. And they indicated that one of the reasons that they chose Arkansas was because of the relationship that we have built, as well as Jonesboro having such a great workforce for their industry, and we're being centrally located. So that was really a great success story today as we met with President Song of RiceEver and her family, and the enthusiasm that they have for Arkansas and this investment is very remarkable. We wound up in Shanghai today, and of course tomorrow we'll go to Suzhou and continue on through a couple other cities and then into Japan early next week. And then we'll be meeting with a number of new prospects which are important for this trip as well. I wanted to make a couple of observations. Whenever we got what I thought was within the window of early Chinese investments in the United States and recruited 5 companies here, I actually thought the investment opportunities would diminish and that there would not be those in the coming years. This trip has persuaded me otherwise. While the Chinese government has tried to tighten up their currency going out of the country, it's primarily in entertainment, in some of the vanity investments as they describe it, and they're very much still engaged in encouraging foreign direct investment in the manufacturing sector that we are trying to recruit in Arkansas. So their opportunities are very significant going into the future. And part of that, leading up to President Trump's visit, a lot of discussion about that here, a lot of excitement. President Xi has described this as a state plus visit by President Trump. And I expect his visit here in China will be very positive for Arkansas. It will be positive in the sense that his visit will lead to increased return of manufacturing from China to the United States, and I certainly want Arkansas to get its share of that. But secondly, it's been indicated to me that President Trump will have on the agenda the ag issues that are of concern to me and to our farmers in Arkansas, hopefully to encourage China to accelerate their final review process so that that market will be open. So that should be on the agenda when President Trump is here, and I expect that to be positive for us as well. And so it's been an extraordinary trip thus far. We have a lot more work to do. We started at 6 a.m. this morning from Jining, and we wind up here in Shanghai tonight. We'll start early again tomorrow. And with that, before I turn it over for questions, I know a few things I've left out, so I'll ask Director Preston to come join the mic.
Let's see, get framed up. Thank you, Governor, and good morning to everyone back in Little Rock. Fantastic to see everyone, and what a great trip we've had so far. As the Governor alluded to, we've got a lot of work left to do. Before I came down, I calculated we were at over 14,000 miles traveled so far, with a little more than 8,000 left to go before we make it back home to Little Rock. So these trips are always daunting and challenging, but in the end proved to be very rewarding. The difference that I've seen over the last couple of years, in the first year, trying to get into our foot in the door, right now our agenda is packed. If you look back 3 years ago, not that it wasn't back then, but we have more and more companies, more government officials wanting time with the governor when he's here. So having the audience with the governor and the officials here and the companies, what a difference it makes. And now 3 years in, as the governor said, starting at 6 a.m. and now we're still running strong at 10:30 p.m. With an entirely packed agenda. It's because Arkansas is really now on the map in terms of China. I think with the foreign direct investment we're seeing in these 5 announcements, that success is really rippling through the country, and it's hard to get everywhere in this country, but we've targeted some key provinces, and that we're going to continue to work on. So tomorrow we look forward to a good update from our friends with Tian Yuan. That's a company that's locating in Arkansas. They're doing the garments for Adidas, about 400 jobs. Things seem to be going very strong there, but we're going to get a further update from Chairman Tong and his group. And then we have other companies that are just interested in Arkansas, a few that have already been to the state. Now we're following up and continuing on that recruitment efforts. From there, going into Japan, we have a lot of opportunities for new investment as well. Japan, we have such a long-standing history with them, and companies that are existing in Arkansas. So some follow-up work there to do to make sure that we're taking care of the companies that are already there, and then pushing forward on new companies that we're looking to recruit from. So with that, I think we're happy to open it up for questions. Unless the governor had anything else, I'll turn it back over to him.
Thank you, Mike. And with that, I do want you to know I've been following everything from a distance, and certainly excited about what's happening in Washington with the tax plan. But let me turn it over for questions that you might have.
Governor, you mentioned the fact that the Trump administration is coming to China on its Far East trip, and you mentioned also that you make some inroads on the protocol for the farming and agri industry. What's the timetable for getting those protocols through, and where there is no tie-up for Arkansas businesses to do business in China and Far East?
Well, actually, I was excited about a month ago. I had a call from one of our commodity brokers in Arkansas that actually had sold a large quantity of brown rice to China. But the challenge is that we cannot sell the final rice product to China until they do their inspections. It's my political judgment that they're could be slow walking this until they have the right opportunity with President Trump's visit. So I'm hopeful that this will accelerate it. And obviously, there's a lot of dynamics between our U.S.-China relationships in terms of North Korea, the security issues, and utilizing and making sure they're engaged in that process, and then combining that with our trade issues that President Trump will be discussing. So I'm sure there's some leverage points here, but I hope that this will be one of those leverage points that we will be successful in to accelerate that. I cannot give you a time frame. The China government sets that, but we have put as much pressure as we can. And it does make a difference whenever the Arkansas governor is here and making the case to the Chinese officials that this would be a boost for us. And they need our rice. They want our rice. It's just a matter of getting through those final steps. So the fact that I'm here making the case, I know adds to the strength of the opportunity, and hopefully President Trump's visit will help put that over the top.
Governor, the Chinese People's Congress wrapped up their convention in late October. I was just wondering if you could give us your insight into the political climate going on over there and what that impact might be on the relations with states such as Arkansas.
I think it's positive. Obviously, I always want to see more freedoms, more market-driven influences here in this country. The People's Congress that just completed really solidified the power base and the leadership of President Xi. And so he will be president for some time. I think his power and his leadership is unquestioned. And so that's probably one of the biggest storylines coming out of it. But the other storyline coming out that, again, is good for Arkansas is that they want to continue their foreign investment. They want to continue to build their economy. And what is encouraging to see is that their economy is maturing by the development of the middle class that spend money, that consume. And that's really a strong part of the developing China economy. What that means for us is that their wage rates go up, the shipping costs remain the same, and so they have to look both at the U.S. market in terms of being able to market their products and the consumers in the U.S., but also it's the logistics of it. It's the facts that they don't have the low-cost wages that they used to have, and so we can compete with manufacturing in the United States, and that's the President Xi is certainly indicating that's the direction he'd like to see the country go as well.
Governor, unrelated to the China trip, the state Supreme Court yesterday issued a ruling regarding the execution drug labels, ruling that the state's Method of Execution Act doesn't extend that confidentiality to manufacturers of the drug. It only goes towards suppliers and sellers. Wanted to see what you thought about that ruling, and also do you think there needs to be another look at, are you looking at proposing any changes to the execution drug secrecy law?
Uh, the key part of what the Arkansas General Assembly did was to, the intent was to protect the source of the drugs. And that has been a standard that we've adopted, that the Supreme Court affirmed earlier in the year. Now they, I think, have indicated that the exemption for manufacturers is not as clear as it should be. We'll have to look to see whether that demands a legislative fix down the road. In the meantime, we want to work with the Attorney General as it goes back to the lower court to determine what needs to be redacted, what needs to be done to comply with the Supreme Court rule. But we must really follow the mandate of the legislature and the intent of that law, and that is to protect the supply chain. And so that's what we'll be striving to do, and we'll confer with the Attorney General, with the Department of Corrections to determine the next steps there.
Was the intent, when you signed this, do you think the intent was to include manufacturers in that exemption?
I think it was to exclude anyone in the supply chain that might lead to the discovery of where the drugs are coming from. Because, obviously, if those names are disclosed, then the sources dry up and it is determined to be of a public need. And so, previously, enterprising reporters used some labels to determine who the manufacturer was. And as you know, one or more of the manufacturers made it very clear they did not want to have the drugs utilized, and so it defeated the purpose of the law. And so that, I believe, is the purpose. That's why I signed it. And if there's any gaps in that the Supreme Court has identified, then we certainly need to try to remedy that to fulfill the legislative intent.
Is there any update on your consideration of Jack Green's case?
I'm not sure whether we issued a statement on that today or not, but I prepared a statement which says that, I have reviewed all of the transcripts, I've reviewed the case file, I reviewed the proceedings before the parole board, including the oral testimony of Jack Green. And in terms of the question of his mental competency to be executed, to have the sentence carried out, the standard of the Supreme Court, in my judgment, has been met. In his own words, he describes the murder of the victim, why he did it, and he understood clearly why he is being held accountable. So in his own words, he expresses himself in a way that meets the Supreme Court standards. So I've seen nothing that causes me concern in proceeding forth at this point. Obviously, we will continue to receive any information, continue to evaluate that, but at this point, that execution is still scheduled and will remain on the schedule.
Sorry for the dumb question, but I guess does this mean you rejected clemency, that decision hasn't been made?
Andrew, can you say that again?
Does that? Sorry, this is. It sounds like a dense question, but does this mean you've rejected clemency for him and you sided with the recommendation that he not get clemency?
Well, it's been my practice. I think the practice of previous governors is that clemency is something that is open up until the last minute. So you never foreclose any action in the future. But I also want to indicate that I have seen nothing in the files or information that's been brought to me that would change my view that the penalty of the jury should be carried out. So that's the way we'll proceed. As I indicated, if there's additional information that comes to me, it will be evaluated. But at this point, we're proceeding.
Governor, I wanted to ask you, going back to China, in President Trump's trip, of course, the indictments came down this past week from Prosecutor Mueller. Do you think that will impact the trip anyway and affect some of the issues on the trade issues that you discussed?
I do not. I've been in meetings with business leaders here. I've been in meetings with government officials here. We've had casual conversation. We talk about the U.S.-Asian relationships. We talk about all these issues, and in no event, in no circumstances did anybody bring up the Mueller investigation, the recent indictments. And so I do not see it as a factor at all in the president's meeting with leaders here in Asia.
Governor, I have a question about your China trip. What can we, what can you tell us that this trip will be a success or not? What are the markers on gauging the?
Well, the trip will be a success if the 5 commitments of industry to locate in Arkansas come to fruition as we expect it to be, because that is one of the major purposes of this trip, is to cement those relationships, to make sure that we are, as a state, supporting those investments and those jobs that are being created. So the follow through on each of these announcements is very, very important to me. I don't believe in making an announcement and then not having that come to actual reality, investments and jobs being created. So we don't control everything, but we're doing everything we can to make sure that our relationships are strong, those investments take place. Obviously there's would be an extra bonus if there's additional investments made based upon some of the new calls that we're making here. That could happen next year. It could happen after I leave my term of office as governor 5 years from now. And so that remains to be seen. But I know without a doubt that the most successful states are when the governor is consistently here. That makes the difference. It is the long-term relationships, the fact that I've been here 3 years consecutively with Director Preston and the economic development team has sent an incredible strong signal to China that Arkansas is serious about the global investments here. So those are the tests to me. I think the fact that we've started out with 0 companies from China investing in Arkansas, and now we have 5, indicates that every one of these trips have been very successful.
Last question.
All right, well, thank you.
Sorry.
One last question there.
Do you just have any quick response to the revenue report that was handed down yesterday?
The revenue report? Well, yes, I studied it over very carefully, and I think you've got to bear in mind these ups and down revenue reports with what happened last year. We were scratching our heads through 2 or 3 months as to why the sales taxes fluctuated downward. The corporate income tax was not making the projections. We took some action that we thought was prudent. 2 months later, all of these statistics rebounded, wound up with a surplus. And so, you put that as an overlay with the revenue numbers we got this month, and I think the message is delighted with the individual income tax collections. Once again, it shows that our tax cuts and our job creation efforts is creating more taxpayers in Arkansas, and that economic development effort is working. The corporate income tax, the sales tax, we want to continue to watch, but from last year's experience, I think patience is the word. Let's see how the next 2, 3, 4 months develop. Thank you all for giving me time today. It's great to see you, and you all have a great day. Thank you.